F1 is fun until it isn't. Here are the scariest fatal crashes in Formula 1, with each one worse than the last. And number 2 still gives me chills. Starting with number 10, Riccardo Paletti. I want you to understand something. Riccardo Paletti didn't crash because he made a reckless move. He crashed because Formula 1 failed him for half a second. The 1982 Canadian Grand Prix start was already wrong. Didier Pironi stalled on the grid. Cars swerved. Marshals waved. Confusion everywhere. Paletti came off the line at full launch speed, and by the time he saw Pironi, there was nowhere left to go. He had a high-speed, near head-on impact into a stationary Formula 1 car. There was no space for him to change angle or even reduce his speed. The ocellas collapsed instantly. The front suspension disintegrated. The monocoque folded inward. The steering column drove straight back into the cockpit. From a physics standpoint, this is one of the worst scenarios imaginable. The car stopped almost immediately. But unfortunately, Paletti's body did not. The G-forces were catastrophic, the kind that shut organs down before pain even registers. Whatever chance existed was gone in the first fraction of a second. Then came the fire. People remember the flames. But the truth is, the fire didn't kill Riccardo Paletti. The impact did. The fire was just what the cameras saw. And just like that, a young driver paid the price of a Formula 1 car running out of room to stop. The next crash multiplies the impact. At number 9, Lorenzo Bandini. Bandini's crash wasn't instantly fatal, and that's what makes it unsettling. It was at Monaco, 1967. Bandini was pushing hard, chasing Denny home for the lead. The harbour section was fast, narrow, and unforgiving. Coming into the chicane, Bandini clipped the inside barrier at speed, and the Ferrari launched instantly. The impact wasn't a single hit, it was a chain reaction of violence. First contact shattered the suspension. The car flipped violently. The chassis began to tear itself apart mid-air, pieces flying before the car even hit the ground again. And each rotation slammed Bandini's body in a different direction. Every flip multiplied the forces already acting on him, and this happened in an era where the cockpit offered little protection. There was no proper fuel containment, and fire resistance wasn't as high as it is now. So by the time the car stopped moving, fire consumed what was left of the car. Fuel spilled and the flames spread. At this point, extinguishers couldn't save Bandini. The violent impacts had pushed the limits of what a human body could take. And this next crash is even worse. Next up is Roland Ratzenberger in 1994. This is one of those moments where Formula 1 goes quiet. Not because nothing is happening, but because everyone understands what they're seeing at the same time. And it happened during Saturday qualifying. Imola, Villeneuve corner. Ratzenberger had already gone off once that lap. Nothing dramatic. He clipped a curb, damaged the front wing, and kept going. And that's the problem. Because damage like that doesn't announce itself. It waits. So, as he comes down the straight, flat out, the front wing finally gives up completely. At over 300 kilometers per hour, or 195 miles per hour, the car loses all front downforce in an instant. He tries to regain control, but nothing happens. The Simtek just keeps going, straight toward the wall, like the steering wheel isn't even connected anymore. It was a full-speed, head-on impact into concrete. The hit was brutal. The car stops almost immediately, and things were already looking very bad. Marshals hurry to the scene. Medical teams rush in. Sadly, Ratzenberger's fate was decided the moment the wing failed. And what makes this even harder to process is that everyone went racing the next day. Because in Formula 1, fatal crashes don't stop the weekend. And the very next day, Ayrton Senna had a fatal crash. This is the moment Formula 1 lost its shield. Sunday, race day. Imola had already taken one life that weekend, and everyone knew it. The air felt wrong before the lights even went out. At lap 7, Tamburello, Senna leads the field. Nothing dramatic, no battle, no mistake you can point to. He turns in, and the car doesn't. The Williams drifts wide, almost politely, like it's ignoring him. At over 211 kilometers per hour, it spears straight into the concrete wall. There's no runoff here, just a near-direct hit that stops the car far faster than the human body ever could. The impact is savage. The suspension collapses upward. Parts of the car intrude into the cockpit. The deceleration forces spike instantly. This is the kind that compresses organs and snaps blood vessels before pain even registers. The car rebounds slightly, then goes still. And that's when the silence hits. There was no fire, just a motionless helmet inside a wreck that looks almost intact. And that's what makes this one so disturbing. We're used to seeing cars explode and drivers climb out. But here, the car doesn't look destroyed enough to explain what just happened. Medical crews arrived fast. When they reached him, the air was sour. He was flown to a hospital, but not much could be done, and he passed that evening. For a driver like Senna, the passing shook fans to the core, and that weekend at Imola was just the worst ever. The next fatality is that of François Scarier. This is one of those crashes you don't need replayed. Once is enough. Watkins Glen. It was practice for the United States Grand Prix. Scarier was fast and precise. Then all of a sudden, something goes wrong mid-sequence. The car snaps, and at that speed, a snap means launch. The Tyrrell leaves the track at a shallow angle and hits the guardrail almost head-on. Not once, but twice. The first impact lifts the car. The second one tears it apart. Steel barriers didn't absorb energy back then. They redirected it back at Scarier. The car is ripped open instantly. The cockpit doesn't stay intact long enough to matter. Pieces of the car scattered around. What makes Severt's crash so terrifying isn't how loud it is, it's how final it feels. By the time the car comes to rest, there's nothing left to rescue. François Severt was only 29, a rising star, Jackie Stewart's protégé. He was a man expected to fight for championships. Instead, the sport lost him in a practice session in a place where drivers were supposed to be safe enough to push. And just when you think F1 has finally figured out safety, Jules Bianchi crashes in Japan 2014. Now this is the crash that shouldn't exist in modern Formula 1. It was in Suzuka. Heavy rain. There were yellow flags everywhere. Adrian Sutil had already gone off. A recovery tractor was on track, something you almost never see during a live session anymore. Cars were supposed to slow down. But unfortunately, Jules Bianchi didn't. Coming into Dunlop Curve, his Marussia lost grip. The car slid. Not in a wild or dramatic way, but in a way that it just never recovered from. It didn't look like anything so bad initially to everyone watching. The car leaves the track. The camera pans. And then you realize what's waiting there. The Marussia goes under the recovery vehicle. At high speed, the car's nose dives beneath the tractor, and the roll hoop never has a chance to do its job. The top of the cockpit meets solid metal at head height. The car came to a violent stop, and with nowhere for the force to go, the impact was brutal. Bianchi received the full force of the stop. By the time help reached him, he was unconscious, and he never regains his consciousness. He's airlifted to the hospital with severe brain injuries. Weeks pass, then months. Jules Bianchi finally passed away in 2015. After this, F1 finally drew a line. But for Jules Bianchi, that line came too late. This next crash is just so horrifying that it almost doesn't make sense. At number 4 is Helmut Koenig in 1974, Watkins Glen again, but a different year. Same lesson though. Helmut Koenig was running at speed when the car drifted toward the Armco at a shallow angle. The Surtees hit the barrier and nose dived under the steel instead of bouncing back. Armco wasn't designed to absorb cars, it was designed to stop them. So at the wrong height and the wrong angle, they were lethal. The top rail sliced through the cockpit. At medium-high speed, the barrier decapitated the survival space. This is one of the most terrifying things a barrier can do. It removed the one place the driver is supposed to live. The marshals rushed to the scene, but there was no help to give. They couldn't extract or start a rescue sequence because the outcome was obvious. What makes Koenig's crash so disturbing is how ordinary it looks at first glance. If you don't know what happened, you might miss it. But once you understand the mechanism, once you realize the barrier didn't fail, it worked as intended, it becomes scary. The barrier stopped the car like Formula One planned it would, but they didn't calculate it wiping the driver out in the process. Roger Williamson's crash in Netherlands 1973 doesn't get any better. This crash still hurts to watch, because this wasn't just about impact. It was about time. Zandvoort, lap 8. Roger Williamson's March suffers a sudden tire failure at high speed. The car snaps sideways and slams into the barrier hard enough to tear it apart. The impact alone was violent. The car rolls and lands upside down, sliding to a stop in the middle of the circuit. Fuel spills everywhere. Smoke starts to rise. And for a moment, there's hope. Because the crash is survivable. Williamson is alive. He's trapped but alive. But this fire didn't stop the race. Cars kept flying by and avoiding the wreck like it's just another obstacle. And to make matters worse, help didn't come in time. The marshals hesitated. They didn't have fireproof suits. They didn't have the right extinguishers. They just didn't know what to do. One driver finally stops. David Purley pulls his car over and runs back toward the fire alone. No backup, no protection, just instinct. He tried to flip the car, but he couldn't. He grabs an extinguisher. It's useless. The fire grows. The smoke thickens. Purley is waving, screaming, begging for help, but no other driver stops. This is the part that makes your stomach drop. Because you realize the crash didn't kill Roger Williamson. The delay did. By the time officials finally intervene, it's too late. The flames have already done their work. Williamson dies of smoke inhalation, with another driver fighting to save him in plain sight. This isn't the scariest crash because of speed or force. It's terrifying because it exposes something worse. Formula One didn't just fail to protect a driver that day. It shamelessly left him there. And once you've seen that, the sport never looks the same again. Speaking of never looking the same, the next crash claimed multiple lives at the same time. At number 2 is Wolfgang von Tripp's crash in 1961. Von Tripp's crash was so bad that Formula One just couldn't contain it. It happened at Monza, lap 2, the fastest circuit on the calendar. Wolfgang von Tripp is fighting Jim Clark down the straight. The two cars were just inches apart. Racing pretty much looked like this back then, and everything was fine until their wheels touched. And that's all it takes. Von Tripp's Ferrari is launched upward, not sideways, up. The nose lifts. The car becomes airborne at full speed. The footage doesn't even look real. The Ferrari rises like it's weightless, clears the barriers, and disappears into the crowd. There's no slow motion needed. Your brain already knows this is wrong. The violence is on the trajectory. The wheel-to-wheel contact converts forward speed into vertical force, turning a racing car into an unguided missile. The crash doesn't end at the wall. It multiplies. The car lands among spectators. Debris scatters. The sound changes. This crash is so terrifying because Von Tripp wasn't the only one who lost his life at the scene. About 15 spectators and fans lost their lives as well. Formula One has always been dangerous for drivers, but Monza 1961 made it clear that you might not be safe, even though you're just there to watch your favorite driver race. And after that mass casualty, F1 had to tighten their belts and raise safety. Barriers changed, layouts changed, and nothing tops Gilles Villeneuve's crash in Belgium, 1982. This is the crash that still feels unreal, no matter how many times you see it. Not because it's fast, but because the car doesn't behave like a car anymore. It was at Zolder, qualifying. Gilles Villeneuve is on a flying lap, pushing like he always did, chasing a time that probably didn't even matter. Ahead of him, Jochen Mass is slowing down. One driver flat out, the other easing off. And in Formula One, that difference can be fatal. They come together at speed, and the contact isn't violent at first. It's subtle, almost ordinary. But the angle was wrong, and that's all it took to create a fatal crash. Villeneuve's Ferrari hits Massa's car, and suddenly, forward motion turns into lift. Your brain can't process the footage fast enough because the car just launches. It becomes airborne at over 200 kilometers per hour, rotating violently. And before it even has time to land, it starts coming apart. Everything's scattered, wheels tear off, bodywork explodes outward. The chassis doesn't hold long enough to protect anything inside it. Villeneuve is thrown from the car while it's still spinning through the air. There was no cockpit to protect him. By the time anything touches the ground, it's already over. The broadcast cuts away immediately. No replays, no commentary filling the silence. Villeneuve loses his life instantly. This is widely considered the most violently destructive crash in Formula One history, not because of fire or barriers, but because the car itself ceases to exist while the driver is still in it. Formula One didn't become safer by luck. It became safer because moments like these forced it to change. Every crash on this list raised way more than an eyebrow and forced the sport to protect its athletes and fans. Which of these moments stuck with you?